All right, Brandon, welcome to the podcast. Appreciate you coming on.
Great. Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Yeah, you hit me up on Facebook off of a post that I made like a month ago. And it was the one.
Oh, it was only a month. I thought it was longer than a month. Yeah,
It might have
I
been longer than that. It
saved
might have been
it.
2 months actually. I might have done that around New Year's. I don't know.
Yeah, I saved it and I meant to reach out to you, and then I kept putting it off, and I forgot about it, and then finally I saw it again. I'm like, oh shit, I forgot to message that guy. So I'm like, I'll message him now and hope he doesn't think that I was like scrolling through old posts. That'd be kind of weird, but yeah. Well,
I mean,
anyways, I'm
that's
here
why we
now.
have those Facebook groups though, is like, just to be able to do stuff like that. You know.
Yeah.
I don't even remember. I think I plastered that same message to like 4 or 5 groups, and I think I didn't get a lot of responses because I plastered it to a bunch of the same people, all in different groups, and that's my better
Oh,
why. um, but no, it's great to meet you. I went through some of your material. You've been doing filmmaking more or less for you had interest in it about 20 years ago, and then then your work picked up in terms of its frequency around 10 years ago in 2015. Am I right?
that is exactly right. Yeah, ever since I was like a teenager, I've kind of dabbled in it with like writing and making really crappy short films. But it wasn't really yet. About 2015 was when I got laid off from my day job. And then I was kind of like, well, do I go get another job I hate, or do I try to do this full time? And I was like, well, let's just go for it. And I can always get another job. And here we are, just 10 years later, and I'm still struggling, but it's working. I'm making it happen.
How
Put
old
all
are
the
you now?
effort in. Pardon?
How old are you now?
I'm 45.
Okay, all right. Better
Yeah.
late than never. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
actually, a lot of people got started their careers got started later than you would think. Especially a couple, for a big example, I think would be Morgan Freeman,
Yeah.
or it's either Morgan Freeman or Samuel Jackson. It's one of those guys. But you run your own company, which I find very interesting. But the other interesting aspect is that there's also comics involved with it. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I started making. I've always been into comics since I was a kid, and it was like before I started doing the films again, probably like 2010. I was like, you know what? Like instead of always talking about wanting to write all this stuff, like I should just do it. So I would use money from my job. I would hire artists. I would write the scripts. I would hire them to draw and color them. I'd put them together, and then I'd sell them and reinvest the money into making more comics. And I kind of had this little thing going where people enjoyed them, and I was making a little bit of money. And then I was like, you know what? Like now that I'm successful at this, maybe I should pick up and the screenwriting and filmmaking thing. Maybe I should give that a try and take that seriously. So I started
Hmm.
doing that. That started working, and then that was kind of right around the time I got laid off. So I was like, well, you know what? Like I'm starting to bring in a bit of money. If I have full time hours to put into it now, I can work extra hard and then
Was it because
hopefully
you
make.
were drawing at work? Is that why? Is that why you got laid off?
Nah,
Too busy
nah,
daydreaming.
it was economy bullshit or whatever. It's just the way it is here, I guess. But yeah, I never draw. I can't draw. Like I can barely even draw stick figures. So I would write. I would hire other people to do the artwork. But
How
yeah,
did you distribute
I can't
that?
claim some of them I would self-publish. Most of them I did. Some of them I would write some comics for like other companies, mostly like indie companies. And then the biggest one I had was Chainsaw Reindeer. They got picked up by Action Lab, which was a fairly big company. So that one was in like comic stores all over the world. One of my artists lives in Poland, and he like took a picture of him holding my comic in a comic store in Warsaw, and
Oh, that's cool.
like they were in the Philippines and Australia, and it's like wow. So that was kind of yeah, that was kind of a highlight of my career.
Well, once that happened, then you started. You said you started wanting to pivot into filmmaking. Why did you want to do that when you saw that maybe comics had a certain potential to it if you could actually get into like one of those larger distribution companies?
I think part of it is just like I want to do everything. I think a lot of artists are like that. It's like I'm into music, I'm into movie, I just want to do everything. Um, Whereas it's like it would just it would grow stale if I only did comics. Like there's a lot of comic
Mm,
book people that go on to screenwriting and doing movies or some sort of crossover. And I figured like I'm not actually if I was doing the drawing that would take up a lot more time maybe. But if I'm just writing the scripts, if I could write a comic script, I could also write a movie script. And if I'm supervising the making of a comic, I could also supervise the making of a movie. So that was kind of where I was coming from. And I just wanted, in like movies, you see like with the Marvel movies, they make more money than the comics. Like it is a bigger medium that you could get to
Yeah.
a wider segment of the population. So I figured, the dollar signs were a little more there. But I just started like writing short scripts at first, and I would just find people online looking for short scripts, and I would just sell them for like $50, $100, and it'd be like, okay, that's enough. That's the power bill for one more month. That's my grocery bill for like another week, and I would just keep doing that. And then sometimes I'd sell a bigger project for like $1,000 or $2,000, and it's like, okay, that's my rent for another couple months, and I would just write like crazy just to like slowly inch my way along. And then, of course, the side effect of writing that much means I got good really quick. Like I probably learned as much in that 6 months doing that than I had in the previous like 30 years of my life. I just like wrote like crazy. And then once that started coming in, and I was like, hey, I'm starting to be known as a screenwriter. I was like, you know what? Like I've kind of tried to make some films before. Maybe I could try that again. So I started doing that. And again, I had to learn from scratch. Like I didn't really have the resources or knowledge of how to do it properly. So I just, I would try to film it myself. I do my own lighting, and it didn't look very good, but it was a starting point. I got to meet a few actors here and kind of piece things together. And then after that, I was like, maybe I should raise some money. So I did like a crowdfunding, and I raised like $6 or $10,000. And I made another short film called I'm in Love with the Dead Girls, kind of like a horror dark comedy kind of thing. And it's like, oh, that actually got kind of popular and got on YouTube, and people would reach out to me, and just basis on that, they would like, it's like, hey, I really like that. I'm looking to someone to write the script for me. Can you do it? So I'd be like, oh, so I get a writing gig out of it. And then when it came time to do my next short film, it was easier to raise the money because we'd done this other successful one. So we had more people, then we got to have better actors come on board. And then I just kind of built it up and up. And then we made Hot Box, which is like my first, like a feature-length stoner comedy movie. And that was one where we had like, there was like 100 people involved in it. Like it was just a much bigger deal. And then I've just been escalating it ever since. And
that was fairly recent, right? Hot Box
it came out, I think we shot it 2018, I think, and it came out like 2019, 2020, right around there. So
okay,
fairly recent, I guess.
Fairly recent enough. Well, curiously, how did making your own projects, directing, and then presumably producing them affect your writing that you had already been doing for a while in terms of your style? And like, because you'll find, obviously, you get notes from directors. It's like, okay, this isn't going to translate well. Once you stepped into those shoes, did it affect your writing in the way that you were going about it previously, just from being a screenwriter?
Yeah, it's definitely a different process, like writing for someone else versus writing for me. Like, especially if I'm writing for someone who's hired me before, I know what they like and I know what their notes are going to be. So I'm like, I'm just going to write it to cater to their tastes and what they want to do. For me, it's like, I know what it's going to be. I could almost like, I would say I could get lazy, but it's like, if I'm going to be the one directing it, I know what I mean. So I don't have to describe things too much. It's just like, I'll write it out. I know what I mean. I'm going to be the one to do it as long as the team understands and everything. But it's also freeing because I don't have to be like, oh man, is this guy going to like this or not? It's just like, I think this is hilarious. It's going in the movie because, I'm calling the shots. And then, other people like the actors and friends and stuff, like they could be like, how about we do this? And, everyone kind of puts in their own ideas. And it's like, hey, like there's no one above us. We don't have studio executives breathing down our neck. We can do whatever we want. So it is very freeing. And as soon as you start working for, like most of the writing I do for other people's for indie stuff, like quite low budget stuff, but I have written some bigger things. And it's kind of like the more money you make, the bigger the budget is, the harder it is, and the more they control everything. And basically, the less fun it is. Like sometimes, you get the contract, it's like, wow, I'm getting all this money, and you're all happy. And then it's like drudgery for like months of just having to deal with meetings, and they don't like everything, and it kind of like takes the fun out of it. Where as soon as it's back to like, okay, now it's just me and my friends doing this, then all of a sudden it's fun. It's like we could do whatever we want, and yeah, there's way less money involved, but it just satisfies that like creative like itch. It's just like fulfilling. It's like whether you're in a band or anything, like if you're doing what you love to do, it's going to be so much more fun than if you're just doing what the record company tells you because you got to make money and you're playing a style of music you don't even like it. It's just like you start wondering like, what am I doing this for, right? Like it. So yeah, I love it. It's different, and writing for different people, different, writing for different mediums, different. But I love writing things that I know I'm going to make because then it's like I have absolute freedom.
Is writing still your first love, or have you found a little bit more balance once you've tasted the other departments?
Oh no, it's still writing all the way. Like if I had to pick one that I could only do, it would be writing. Directing, it's like I'm fairly good at it, I think, and it's also just that like um, I just have the drive to do it. Not a lot of people do, right? Some people, they just want to act. They don't want to be in charge of anything, or they just want to do they're a sound guy. They just love doing their thing. Whereas if you're a director, you're kind of like in charge of everything, and not a lot of people like to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind doing it, and I'm apparently fairly decent at it. So I end up directing the things. And just the fact that I end up taking the lead and I'm the one usually raising the money, it's like, well, technically I'm a producer too. So it's like I'm writer, director, producer, even though I hate producing. I like, even now, it's like I just don't really want to do it anymore. Like I would love for someone else to, raise the money and do all that, and I'll just be the director. But even if I never directed again, I could live with it. But I would want to be writing something. I write books and comic books and other stuff. That's definitely my main source of joy.
How do you, because obviously, artists have, and you sound like you put yourself into the same camp, is that you have, there's a lot of things that look like eye candy to you. Everything looks good. It's like, I want to taste that. I want to try that. I want to do this. How do you decide that an idea is worth giving your time to when there's so many things that look good?
It is hard. And like, I have a list, like it's like a few years ago, it was like 5,000. It's probably like 8,000 now. I'm just like, every idea I have, I just write down in this book. Part of it is, when I want to make something, but a lot of times people will be like, hey, do you have a script that takes place like all in a baseball field or something like that? And I'm like, oh shit, I totally had a good baseball idea like a few years back. So I'll go through my list and be like, oh yeah, I got something, and I'll turn that into something. Which happens quite a bit. Or they'll be like, I need a Christmas romantic comedy Christmas movie. And I'd be like, yeah, I got like 50 of those written down. So I'll go and, pick one of those. But a lot of the time it comes down to what can we do? And so I have to look at kind of like my own skills, and it's like sci-fi things in outer space. Like I just can't do that. But horror, like slasher movies, like we made Grotesque and Grotesque 2. It's like I could do a low budget slasher movie because it's not that hard. And also people, and they're forgiving of lower budgets. Whereas if you tried to make like a Marvel movie with $50,000, right, it would just look like a piece of shit and everyone would hate it. You do that with a slasher movie or even a stoner comedy, and people kind of love it for that reason. They just love the rawness of it. So I kind of look at what it's like, can we do this? And there's been a few that it's like we started to work on, like we're going to do it ourselves. And then I'm like, shit, you know what? It's just going to be too hard. You know what? I'm just going to sell it, which is what happened with a movie called On the Hour. We're trying to get that going for a couple of years, and then it just kept not happening. I eventually just a couple of weeks ago optioned it to a fairly big filmmaker in Denmark. So I'm hoping that they're hoping to shoot this year. So it's kind of like, you know what? Like That's if cool. I can't do it, I'm just gonna give it to someone else and they can do it. And there's also some things I write, it's just so good, like so appealing to me that I'm like, no one's touching this. Like if I have to wait 50 years, wait till I'm 90, I'll do. It's like I'm doing this myself, come hell or high water.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of those. Sometimes most of the stuff I write is with the intention of someone else doing it, because most of my income, my living, comes from writing for other people. So I'll write stuff with the intention to sell it to someone else to make. But there's even things too, like I could just have to pivot sometimes. Like we made Grotesque 2, and it was like very expensive. Like in the terms of Hollywood movies, it was cheap as hell. But when you have to come up with 50 grand of your own money, it's like still quite a bit of money. And it was such a big project. We had like 200 some people working on it. Like pretty much everyone was volunteer. It was just like, it turned out great, but it was such a big movie that I was just like exhausted when it was done. I was like financially exhausted and just like emotionally exhausted. I was like, man, I don't want to get to a point where I hate making movies, but it's like, that was just too tiring. Like it was fun, but It's like, I don't know if I can do that again. However, I have my I'm Haunted found footage series that I started making with some people that we made for basically nothing. It was a shot on a phone, no microphones, no crew. It was just made like super cheap because it's just people filming on their phone. It was just a fun side project. I didn't think anything would come of it. All of a sudden, that turns into like my most popular movie. Huh. And I was like, holy shit! It's got like a growing fan base on the internet now, and it's one of my only like movies that's actually like made a decent profit. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a part 2. and then that one was successful. So I did a part 3, and now people are like wanting more and more. And so I'm like, okay, so now we're shooting part 4 and probably part 5. So it's like, you know what? If I can write a story and then we could just shoot it super cheap on a phone, and there is an audience that loves it, like I'd be stupid not to try it.
How did you go about first sourcing your actors?
I started going to, I'm up here in Edmonton, Canada. There's the Edmonton filmmakers group. So when I was starting, I didn't know anyone. So I just went to that group, met people there, kind of figured out who was an actor, who did what, picked the people I liked. And then we made this short web series called Mental Case. And then through them, I kind of met other people. They'd recommend friends of theirs they knew were good. So I had like a bigger pool. And then for I'm in Love with a Dead Girl, I think we did like auditions. We just did like open auditions. So I met a bunch of people. And then I don't really do auditions anymore because now I just know like so many actors and I know who I really like working with and I like working with them more often. But when you kind of like how I first started with comics, finding an artist, you just have to basically cast a big net and then get a bunch of people. And some of them don't work out. Some of them you don't like working with, or they don't show up on time, that kind of thing. Others turn out to be really great. So you kind of weed out the bad ones, keep the good ones, work with them more. And then you can like kind of figure out what they're good at and then start writing roles based around that person. Even now when I'm writing, I'm like, so-and-so is definitely going to play this role. Like if they're willing to do it, like I have people in mind. But yeah, it's basically like if you have access to Facebook and things like that, you could find anyone, right? So how I found you, right? I just saw you posted something and then
yeah, it's the same thing down here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Facebook groups are probably when I wouldn't think, especially when I was, first getting on the internet to try to collaborate with, other filmmakers. Facebook was not the thing that I thought it would end up being in terms of a main resource. Like most of the general communities I found are indeed like they're just Facebook groups, and anyone can pretty much just join them, and it's really really simple. But the other thing is the downside of those Facebook groups is that so it's either they're the ones that are active are sort of noisy, and it's sometimes a little hard to filter out, okay, which ones are the good quality projects, like who are the people you want to work with, who has a good reputation, who's not an asshole, that stuff like that. And so it can be a little bit of a challenge to, try to sift through it. But like once you've been on it long enough, you can kind of get the gist of, especially for your local area of like, who's the ideal person that you want to work with. When you first started working with actors, did you have trouble trying to cultivate a good performance if they were experienced, and how did you try to rein them in and get them to deliver a performance that you thought was ideal for your script?
Yeah, it was hard, and to tell you the truth, it's still hard. Because I've heard people say there's kind of like there's the actor's director and then there's like the technical director. I am definitely not an actor's director. It's like I kind of know what I'm looking for in a performance, and I just trust them to do it. I can give them some notes, but for the most part, I just trust them to do it. I'm more about how are we going to make this visually work, like all that kind of stuff. But if I have like a terrible actor, I don't think I have the skills to make them a decent actor or a good actor. I have to pick someone that just knows what they're doing. And for the most part, like they do, like everyone I work with, it's like, especially people I've worked with multiple times, it's like, okay, this is what we're doing, do it. And I'll be like, okay, do it again, like a little bit different or whatever, or, look over here or move here when you do it. But for the most part, like I've never had a problem with that, where the performance wasn't right. Because, we do a read through beforehand, at least one, we'll discuss it. Like sometimes I even meet with individual actors and we'll just, meet for coffee or whatever and talk about it for like an hour or two. So they kind of know what I'm looking for. But I know there's like theater directors that are just like great at like bringing a performance out of someone. And it's like, honestly, I have no idea how to do that. I know different directors do things in a different way. And it's funny because like the people I work with, like actors or crew, they work on like all these different movies. So they've been on different sets with different people, whereas I don't. Like if I'm not making the movie myself, I don't work on another set. So it was like, a few years into it, I was like, what? I don't think I've ever seen like someone else direct. Like, I don't even know what the hell a director does. Like, I know what I do, but so I'm like, it's like, do other people do it like me? And they're like, nah, like, it's like everyone does it differently. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But it's one of those things where, like, if you try to emulate someone else or do it how you think you're supposed to do it, it's probably not going to work. It's like I know how to get things done very, very efficiently and very, very quickly that turn out to be, pretty good because people keep watching them and they make money. So it's like whatever I'm doing seems to work. But yeah, like acting, it's always been a thing that's kind of like mystified me. It's like I've just never quite. It's like I'm no good at it myself.
Have you thought about trying it yourself, or at least just a cameo, just to get your feet wet or something like that?
I've had like a single line in some things before, and even just that, like I've almost like ruined the movie. I usually stand in the background a lot, but funny enough, and I'm Haunted 5. I probably shouldn't even be saying this because I don't want to ruin it, but I have to play myself, and I'm Haunted 5 for this part, and it's like, oh shit, so I'm gonna have to act. However, it is a found footage movie; it's supposed to be real, so I can pretend to be uncomfortable on camera and stuff because that's real, and that's kind of how it's supposed to look. But like, I don't know, some people have a passion for acting, and it's like if I don't have a passion for it and don't even really care to do it, it's like what's the point of even trying to do it? I may as well just stick with what I'm good at.
Have you had to fire anybody yet?
Kinda. Like, usually it's like if we don't get along, or like if they're unreliable, that kind of thing, we just never work with them again.
Okay.
We just kind of filter them out.
Cold shoulder.
And I find a lot of that too is like, because I mean it's a fairly big city here, but it's a fairly tight knit community. And if there's people that are known for not being reliable or being assholes, they will be filtered out by everyone like at the same time. And it's just like, hey, remember that one guy? And it's like, yeah, like he never.
They become the story.
Yeah. So it's just like the word spreads. I've never had to like, you're fired. Get the hell out of here. I've heard things like on other sets, stuff like that happens, but I'm pretty good, I think, at like vetting people. And I also just ask like everyone, because I get approached like every day. People are like, hey, I want to be part of your movie, and so I'll ask people I trust, like Elizabeth and Julie, and people like, hey, do you know this guy? Do you work with him? Like, what's he like? And just to kind of see, because every once in a while, it's you'll hear something like, it's like, I don't know, man, like that guy's kind of a creep, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, like I know now I'm not even going to give him a chance, just because I trust the people I work with, and then it's I want to make sure that like everyone we work with, it's kind of like in any job, right? Like if you have a group of friends at work and there's like one asshole, it just makes the whole day miserable for everyone, right? So it's like even having one bad person on set could just make the whole experience terrible. So it's like we can't even let one in.
It kind of sucks even more when it's like on a mostly volunteer basis, because people are there giving their time, and then they have to deal with, a situation or a particular person that are just ruining how they're spending their free time,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, in Hollywood, there's a lot of, abusive assholes, but at least they're getting paid good money for it. At least they get something out of it. Where here, it's like, if most of the people are volunteering to do this thing, it's like, I want to make sure they have the time of their life. And it's like on Grotesque 2, we had like a lot of it took place at this summer camp. So we rented this summer camp for like a week. So we had like 40 of us, however many was out there. We all stayed in the cabins at this camp, and we'd shoot during the day or whatever, and then we'd like party at night, and it was just like people are like say that they don't remember that the rest of their lives, because like as an adult, how often do you get to go to summer camp and you don't have to go to work, you just get to hang out and have fun with your friends for like a week at summer camp, and it was just like, it's like, yeah, that experience is what I want it always to be. I want to pay everyone more too. If I can make more money, that'd be nice too. But it's like at the very least, I'm going to make sure that they have like a memorable experience and absolutely like love being on the set.
Yeah, I personally have never had like really any experience with like assholes per se. I'm like you. I've only heard stories, of other people on different sets. But it's always an interesting question because, at least in the indie world, it seems like it's exactly what you said. The ones who don't behave themselves very well or are hard to work with, they get filtered out because it is mostly a tight knit community. It's generally you'll find the personalities. I was on one commercial shoot where the grips, was it the grip? It was like grips and electrical crew, or it wasn't the gaffers, but they they get flown in from out of town. I think they were either from Nashville or L.A. But they I watched them like shoo the PAs off of their truck. Like they just went shoo shoo, and they started waving their hand waves, and I'm like, is that? It's a little condescending. I mean, they are there, giving their best effort. When it comes, because communication is one of the most important things when it comes to having a concise and expedient experience on set. It's rough.
Funny. Yeah, like I hear that. It's funny too, and especially like after Grotesque 2, a bunch of our crew, they went to go work on some bigger movie, and then it was like complete, like just a hellish experience.
What made it a hellish experience?
Just getting yelled at, and just like it was just a terrible time with me. It was just like a bad time basically. And it's funny because some of the people that worked on my set, it was their first movie. So this was their first, and it's like we had to tell them, like, it's not always going to be like this. Like, so they go into some other movie and then they get a taste of reality of what the industry can be like. But yeah, I've never understood. It's like, you don't get paid anymore for treating someone badly. So
kindness.
Why? It's like, why? What point is there, right? And there's all the stupid rules. Like even because some of our people, they work on like the bigger union sets, so they'll try to bring the same rules in, and there's stupid things like their director eats first. You'd be like, okay, lunchtime, and then people would line up for their lunch, and they'd be like, that director eats first, and I'm like, what? I'm like, that is not a rule. Like
I have heard of that. Now, you're triggering some memories for me. It's just like I don't know. If you're the leader, like there's the difference between a boss and a leader. A leader would be the one who volunteers to eat last to make sure everyone else gets their meal first. That's something. But
yeah, that was definitely my first thought.
There's dumb rules. It's like I don't know. It's like I get the idea of a union. It's like when the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild strike happened. I think was it last year or the year before or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, like AI taking over the job. Like, okay, I get that. That's what you want a union for. But like, little rules like that, I don't get it. It's just like, how much privilege can we squeeze into our contracts?
Yeah, yeah, I've heard all sorts of stupid rules like that. Yeah, it's like, yeah, and I get it. Like, it's supposed to protect people from being mistreated, but it's like we're just a bunch of people that are doing this for basically fun for next to nothing. So it's like we're gonna do it how we want. And the thing is, like, all those stories in Hollywood of people being abused, those are all union sets. Mm-hmm. So it's like, who are they really protecting? That doesn't happen on my sets because we wouldn't stand up for it. And of course, like, if you have like the strict rules, it's like, okay, some guy's being abusive, we want him fired. Well, it's not that easy. You have to report it to the union, and then you have to go through all this process.
There's a lot of red tape.
We just be like, get the hell out of here, So yeah, I find like I always try to make sure it's good for everyone, because I would hate for someone to not have a good experience. And it's funny, Laura Fuentes, who's younger, she's like an actor, up and coming director. She's hopefully doing her first movie this year that I wrote, actually. And she was one of the first new people, because Grotesque 2 was pretty much the entire cast from Grotesque 1, but playing different roles. So we were kind of like, we all knew each other, but we had a few new people, and Laura was one of them. So she came out to the camp, and of course I didn't even think about it, because it's like, hey, we're all friends, it's gonna be a great time. But of course she told me later that her family were like, oh my god, you're shooting a horror movie, like you're gonna get murdered out there. And her parents were like, okay,
just on screen.
They're like, if anyone, if you have any problems, call us the middle of the night, we'll come get you no matter what. And so they were all apprehensive. And of course it took all of like the first day until all of a sudden she's like having a great time, and she met her like current boyfriend like on that set, and so now she's like one of us. And so looking back, she's like, oh yeah, that was ridiculous. But it's like, yeah, you never know what you're getting into when you join up with a whole bunch of people, and you hear horror stories about stuff. So I just love it when people come and they're like, oh my god, when are we doing the next one? Like they just can't wait to do it again.
Mm-hmm. What was the most challenging scene logistically that you've had to direct and create?
Ooh, hard. It's hard to pick one. Like there's so many from like Grotesque and Grotesque 2, because it's all practical effects, or like 99% practical effects for all the kills. So we were trying to do like beheadings and all this other stuff, and we didn't really have an effects person. Like we had Jamie Clark, who's a makeup artist. Like she would do cuts and wounds and that kind of stuff. So basically, she would help, and we kind of all worked together to figure out how to do these things. And some of them worked. Like we would shatter people's heads with a sledgehammer, and so we would like buy a styrofoam head and then paint it skin color, put a wig on it, and it's like, nah, that looks shitty. We got to try it a different way. Probably one of the hardest was guy in part 2, the guy jumping off the roof of the church and landing on that big spike that goes like up his ass and out his mouth.
Oof.
That was hard to do just due to the nature of it. In fact, we couldn't get on. They wouldn't let us on the roof of the church, so we basically had to like lay on the ground with the camera and point up to make it look like he's standing up there. And then we couldn't get him to jump. We just had him like about to jump, and then we just had Elizabeth, the main character, like go like this, like she's watching him fall, and then we cut to him already on the spike. And the spike, we copied the Cannibal Holocaust method, where we had this like contraption with like a metal base and a pole with kind of like a bicycle seat thing on it, like a little seat, and he would sit on it and dangle his legs. And then we had like this cone of like construction paper that we painted silver, and he put that in his mouth and then tilted his head back, and then we put blood on it so it looked like the metal thing was going like through his body. And it was not only hard for that, but also we didn't know, but right across from the church parking lot we were shooting, there was a daycare. So all these kids are out for a daycare, like right across from where we're shooting this horrific scene. So we're trying to like set up these like blankets and stuff to like block the edge of the parking lot so they couldn't see what we're doing. So there's things like that just makes it challenging. I wish I could think of more. We do prepare a lot beforehand, and I try to make sure there's some things I know I have kind of a plan of. If it doesn't work, we can do this instead to like cheap out, cut a few corners. If that doesn't work, there's kind of like another way we cut it some even more corners. And worst case scenario, we'll just have it happen off screen and then cut to the dead body after. Like and sometimes we have to do that. There's sometimes we even had a part where a guy gets his fingers cut off with like gardening shears. So we bought this like fake hand made of plastic and like painted it the right color. Then Elizabeth comes up with the shears and cuts it, but the plastic was too hard, so it wouldn't cut through. So we're like, shit. But we had the shears close on the hand. So then we took it and we sawed the fingers off. And then I think we like balanced them on or something like that. And then had her like do it again. And then I cut the two shots together. And if you watch it frame by frame, it looks horrible. But if you watch it, just play it through, it's quick enough that it's like holy shit, it worked.
There's a lot of films that like if you watch them frame by frame, you wouldn't appreciate them at all. Yeah, exactly. Especially on the indie level. That's not something necessarily you want to go doing.
Yeah, it's just sometimes we got to do the best with what we have, and we had guts getting ripped out, and we had shots too, like that we wanted to shoot in the water, and then for whatever reason we couldn't go in the water, so we have to we tried using a drone, but that didn't work, so we have to shoot it from the dock with like a long lens. And there's always things like that in indie film where you think something's going to work and it doesn't, and you don't have time to screw around for a lot. So it's we have to do this right now. It's our last day here. Let's figure out a way. And it's part of the fun of it too. It's I kind of like that there's a bit of a struggle. It's if it was too easy, it's like playing sports. If it's too easy, then it's less fun. So you want it to be I want to have tales to tell about, man, we had to work so hard to do this. And even we had a part in Protect 2 where she dumps a bucket of leeches on a guy.
Oof.
So I bought a bunch of fishing lure leeches, plastic ones, but there wasn't enough. So we made a bunch. They were Jello or something that we made, but even that wasn't enough. So we had everyone. We put them in a bucket, and there was only an inch in this bucket. Mm-hmm. So we had everyone go out and grab little sticks and break them off into 2-inch pieces, and then we put them on these baking trays and spray painted them black just to make even more. And it probably still wasn't enough, but yeah, we were just always running around trying to figure these things out as we go.
Have you ever had to change something on the spot because an actor wasn't comfortable enough doing it?
Yes. Trying to remember. Yeah, we had a problem with
there's the one guy you didn't hire back.
No, it's and sometimes it's justified. In Grotesque 2, we had a part where Elizabeth, the main character, and her friend, they're kidnapped, and they're their hands are like tied behind their back and they're laying in the grass. But it was at nighttime, and so we were trying to shoot this like 2 a.m, and of course there's like condensation in the grass, which made the grass wet, and the temperature had dipped. So they laid on the ground, and it was freaking freezing. So they're laying in like wet grass in the freezing cold 2 a.m. And so it's kind of like they're like, we can't do it because we're going to be so sick by tomorrow. We can't lay there for like 2 hours. And it was late at night, and we're like, shit, we couldn't figure out how to do that. So we ended up having to postpone that entire scene to a later day, and we ended up shooting it inside of a garage. So it's things like that. Actually, the first movie I ever volunteered on when I was like 16, the little girl was like this little girl who was like 9 or 10, who was like the main character, and she was supposed to sing at this one part. Like the whole movie was kind of based around her upcoming singing performance. And when it came time to sing, she just started bawling and like would not sing. She refused.
How old was she?
So we're like 9 or 10, something like that.
Okay.
So we were like I was just like a PA on it, but the director is like, oh, like what do we do? The whole movie based around this. So they ended up changing it to instead of singing, it was like a live poetry. So she was basically saying the words instead of singing it. And then she was like, okay, I'll do that. That's no problem. It's like, okay, so it's not quite what we wanted, but it still saved the movie and no one questioned it. But I go through everything like beforehand. If there's anything questionable of what they have to do, I make sure like we go over everything. So there's no like, hey, wait a minute, I didn't know I had to get blood sprayed on me. It's like, I want to make sure it's like everything they've agreed to, they know how we're going to do it. No surprises.
Was the title grotesque, though, not enough to signify that there would be blood involved?
Yeah,
Seems a little self-evident to me.
I don't think I've ever had it. Like that is a rare thing. Like people usually know, and they're usually kind of up for anything. I don't think we had any real problems. I mean, we're always safe because sometimes, especially if people are going to get like punched or like neck broken kind of stuff, they're kind of like, wait a minute, like how are we going to do this? And it's like, don't worry, like we have professionally trained like stunt people and like fight choreographers here. Like we know how to do this. Like there's no danger. Because I don't want people to be like scared about what they have to do, and I don't want to make people do anything they don't want to. And a lot of time we have people that love the idea of it. It's like, hey, we're gonna like hose you down with this hose of blood, or when it's like, oh, that's so cool. So I find most of the time people are more than willing to do whatever's necessary.
Is horror your preferred genre, or is there another genre that if you could afford to, you would rather work in?
I think it is my preferred. It's like I'm a big horror fan. It's probably my favorite. I really like comedy too, but comedy is just hard because like it's so subjective. And I know so like with Hotbox, like Hotbox is pretty popular, but we even had Tommy Chong promote it for us because he's from Edmonton. But just like people that watched it like it, but there just wasn't enough people that like that kind of thing to, like thank God we shot it very cheap. But if it cost millions, like it would have been a massive bomb. It's hard to, especially it just seems like there's fewer comedies that come out these days. Like it's just a harder thing to do, but I do like them. But like I would love to do every genre. I've written a romantic comedy that I sold. Like I do other things, but horror is what my favorite thing is to watch. So naturally it's my favorite thing. Like when I want to think up a new movie, it's kind of where my mind goes.
How do you go about selling your screenplays, curiously?
I mainly use like Inktip and Screenwriting Staffing, like the two services you pay like so much a month, and they send you a list of like producers looking for scripts. So I'll pitch scripts to them, but it's also a good way to see what people are looking for, because you'll have like a whole year where everything's action movies. Everyone's looking for an action movie. So okay, I should write an action movie, and all of a sudden it's like shark scripts will be popular for a time. So you can kind of see what's kind of popular and what you should be doing. And I also just go on like Twitter or X and like Facebook, and I just search like in parentheses for scripts needed, looking for a screenwriter, anything like that. Because people, even like you did for looking for guests for the show, people are just like, I need to hire a writer. Sometimes they want a script. Sometimes they just want to, they want to pay someone just to like polish their script. So I'll reach out to them. And I just, I get quite a few gigs that way. And sometimes you get, people that you worked well with before will reach out to you again to write something else for them. And it's just like nonstop hustle. Like I have, going back to 2015, I have this huge database I keep just like on a spreadsheet of like the date, what script I pitched, who I pitched it to, their contact info, and like what their answer was. And people like some people are like, man, like I really love the script. It's great writing, but like it's too expensive for us. I'll hit them up in the future and be like, hey, remember me? I have a new script now that can be done on a lower budget. Are you interested in this one? So I kind of have a list of people and I build relationships with like that. But it's like I hustle so much. Like I'm constantly, even like as soon as we hang up, I'm gonna go pitch a whole bunch of scripts to a bunch of people, and it's like 1 out of 1,000 will respond, 1 out of 1,000 will actually lead to something, and 1 out of 1,000 of those will actually get made. Like it's so like I probably pitched like 15,000 different people or something, and I've had like 6 movies made. You know, like it's
a lot of work.
It's a lot. Yes, yeah. People think like, oh, I'm going to write this script and I can sell it, and it's like writing. It's kind of like 10% of the work. Like you have so much. Like
Have you noticed any trends that have come on the scene when it comes to, you know, pitching particular stories that have just died off completely and not been resurrected?
One thing I didn't notice was a few years back. It was someone explained it to me that like the Chinese government was investing a lot of money in film, but they had filmmakers there and they had the actors there, but apparently their writers aren't very good. So they wanted to reach out to like Western writers to write stuff for the Chinese market. So all of a sudden I started noticing that everyone wants like a script with Chinese elements or a script that could be made in China. So I started pitching to all of those, but they have very strict rules there because of like their communist government. Like there's all these things you can't do.
CCP got that place on lockdown.
Yeah, but none of my scripts ever passed that. Like I'd always try, but it'd be like, you can't have demons, you can't have like ghosts, you can't have. There's so many things, and so I would try to like write around that. And then
they want the Western stories. They just don't want the Western stories.
Yeah, I think and I'm just like, what the hell do you want? And so I would try to write that, and they're like, this is not going to work. And so that there was a while where there was a whole bunch of that, and then that kind of just like disappeared, and now I haven't heard about it since. But you'll see trends come and go. Like there's some main, like horror is starting to go down. Like for the longest time, horror was like the main one. Now it's starting to go down quite a bit. But like Christmas Hallmark type movies are always big, and action's big now. Everything's like action. I think just because it's with newer technology, it's easier to do explosions and things like that, like the effects. So now it's just like, yeah, there's a lot of action stuff. Comedy is kind of very rare. But yeah, if you just kind of keep an eye out on those things, you'll kind of see trends that come and go. For a while there, the like the 1 or 2 person in one location scripts are big, because it's like, hey, if you just have like 2 people in one location, 2 people locked in a bar, and then it's like Saw, and then it's like, okay, those are like super cheap to do. So I wrote a few of those. I even made one of my own that didn't turn out very well, but those are popular, and I don't see those as much anymore. But
have you ever turned down any requests for a particular story?
Yeah, so sometimes they'll ask me to write something that I just know nothing about. Like things like even a script about like a court case like involving law. It's like I've seen like courtroom dramas, but I don't have enough knowledge, and I don't really feel like researching it to make it.
You don't speak legalese.
Yeah, or even things like I think I had one I was supposed to do that took place on like a aircraft carrier or like a battleship of some kind, and I was like, I've never been in the Navy. Like I don't even know what that world's like other than what I've seen in movies. Like it would just be too, like basically for what they're paying me for a low budget movie. It's like I would have to do so much research that I don't want to. I prefer to write things that it's like I'm already kind of familiar with and that I could excel at. So I do have to turn things down sometimes, but it's rare because I got to make a living, and it's not easy being an indie writer. So if I can in any way do it, I'll do it.
Okay. Well, I've heard specifically from other screenwriters that I've interacted with in my area is that there's a degree of, there's 2 things. There's a degree of flakiness when it comes to someone approaching you sometimes when it comes to just exploring what, a script could be, or maybe a particular style of storytelling. And then there's just people that are wasting your time. How do you differentiate whether or not somebody is genuinely interested in trying to actually get a project off the ground, or if they're just there wasting your time?
and that it's something you learn as you go, and to a certain degree, there's nothing you can do about it because you're always meeting new people, and it happens a lot. Like I'd say most of the time.
Hmm.
There is the odd time I've had it where I write a script within 2 weeks. I find someone that wants it, they send me a check, done. That is rare. That's awesome when it happens, but usually it's like you get dicked around for months on end, and you talk and you have meetings and you talk more, and then it's like, hey man, like when are you gonna send the money? Like when are we gonna sign this? Oh, it's coming, and then it just never does, or they back out, or yeah, I've had it too sometimes that they you'll sign like an option agreement, and in indie world the option fees sometimes it's zero, but it's like the most I've ever got for an option is like $3,000. Usually it's like $500 or something. And then it's like, okay, if they make the movie, then you get the rest of the money. You get like a bigger check. And then a year will go by, and like you won't hear a word from them. And it's like, hey man, like, are you trying to get this movie off the ground? And it's like, oh yeah. And they just don't do anything. And then a year will come, and they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, we'll renew the option. So you might get like another $500, and then a whole another year will go by with nothing.
Is that how long a standard a duration is for an option? A year?
Yeah, it's usually a year. And I've had ones where that's happened like 4 years in a row, and it's like it's kind of nice, like that $500. At least you're getting something, but it's like I could be selling the script to someone else, like
right.
And it's like once it's option, it's basically like off the table. So finally, I have to be like, you know what, like just give me the script back, and because some of them are like, no, we're really close to like finding investors, and it's like, yeah, but you've been saying that for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you know what, I'm gonna go try to sell to someone else. In the meantime, even if it's not option, if you find definite money that can come in, then we'll sign an option, but no more of this like selling things and then they don't do anything with it.
Right.
It sucks, especially when you find someone else is looking for a script that matches exactly what you have, and you're like, oh man, like it's like I signed with this other guy.
I'm getting $500 a year for that script when I could have sold it.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's not even $500. Sometimes it's like nothing or whatever. So I've even sold a whole lot of scripts that like basically I've just lost. Like it's just like they never do anything with them. Luckily, most of them are shorter scripts, or like the ones that I don't care about so much. But now I always put something in the contract that says if this does not get made within say 3 years or whatever, I get all the rights back. Because sometimes like I've sold a script to someone, and then like a year go by, and then they're like, you know what, like I'm not in the industry anymore. Like I went back to school to become a whatever. And it's like, well, and it's like, can I have my script back? And they're like, yeah, if you get my money back. And it's like, well, god damn it.
That's not how that works.
So now it's like, okay, like if you're not going to actually do something with this, there's no use wasting my time. But yeah, like this industry is like known for being flaky. Like people will reach out and they like my script, and we'll have some meetings and we'll talk about other things they could do, and they're maybe going to hire me for this or maybe for that, and then it's like 9 months later we're still talking, and then eventually they just stop responding, and then I never hear from them again.
How often do like scripts that you sell, like actually sell, not option, get dropped off the face of the planet? Like the rights are lost, they're not going to make it, versus how many times does your script sell and then you end up seeing it going into production?
It's really, I think the only ones that I've actually sold, like John 3:16, that was one I sold. It got made. Core Values, I was technically hired to write that one. Like it was based on an outline, but that one got made. But there's a lot of them that most of them are ones that they hire me to write. In that case, like I don't mind so much, because they're like, okay, we'll give you like $3,000 to write like one draft of a movie about whatever. Here's like an outline. I'll do that, give it to them, and it's like kind of sucks if it doesn't get made, but whatever. Like I still got paid. I need to do that for my job, whatever they want to do with it. But if it's something that like I created, it's kind of this like kick in the pants that if it never gets made. But most things are perpetually under option. And sometimes the option, like sometimes you get ghosted so much. Like I'll option something, and then the guy just never speaks to me again. And then it's like he won't answer emails or whatever. And it's like, all right, I'll wait till the year's up, and then I have the script back because that was the contract. And like that, it happens more times than I'd like. So I try to never get excited, because a lot of the times, like especially when you send a script to a producer and they write back and they're like, I love this. Like, let's have a meeting. Let's have a chat on Monday. And you're like, oh yes, like money's coming, but it's like even when that happens, the odds of it getting made are still slim. This one in Denmark, I signed the deal with them. It was the same thing. It's like I hear it all the time. I don't get my hopes up, but he seemed like the real deal. He made a movie before. He had this other bigger producer on board who's made some like big movies. So I met with them, but it's like we signed the deal. They paid me the money up front. So it's like it's looking pretty good that they'll get it off the ground, but I'm still not going to get my hopes up because like the odds are always stacked against you. It's so hard to get things made. But
do they put a time limit on your duration to finish the script, and how long is that normally?
Usually, like when I get hired to write something, it usually depends. Usually it's like 6 weeks for the first draft kind of thing,
Okay.
which I think is, I've heard that's kind of what people told me that's what it's like.
120 pages?
Yeah, or they're usually indie movies are like 90. Like they're usually pretty short. But I've had to, some of my favorite gigs are the ones where they're like, okay, we need this script written in like 5 days from now. We'll give you like $2,000. This is one, there was like, you write whatever you want. It has like two female vampires. The end scene has to take place in a bar. And other than that, do whatever you want. It's like, we need it by Friday. We'll give you $2,000. And it's like, I just write quick as I can and send it off, get the money. I don't know if it ever got made because it was untitled and I'm assuming it never got made. But sometimes those are good, but they just need it quick. Because I find that like the quicker it goes, the more chances it is of getting made. Like the people, if their heart's not in it and they can go like 4 or 5 years without making something, they're not in a rush to make your thing. Whereas the people that are like me, where it's like they have to crank movies out in order to make a living. If they hire you to write something, it's like they fully intend to make it. It might not be the greatest, but it's going to get made. Your name's going to be on it. And you're going to get paid. So those are the better ones to get.
How do you get yourself into the flow state in order to accomplish such a tight deadline?
It's hard. I think it's just something that every writer or creative person struggles with, and I don't know the answer. Sometimes, especially when you like, if I'm doing this for a living, it's like you have to do it. It's like it's like if you're a welder or any other job, like you can't not be in the flow. It's like you got to do it. Go to work. You do the work. Like you have to. So I'll just force myself to do it. But I'll go through times like last few days I've been writing the new I'm Haunted movies, and I've been cranking out like 25 pages a day, just like blowing through it, which just feels great. And then I'll go through times where it's like, man, I don't write for like 2 weeks, and then I'll like get out like a few pages, and so it's always a struggle. But when it comes time to write, it's like, especially when people are paying you money, it's like I don't want to be one of those flaky people. I want to be known for being reliable. So it's like I'm just gonna sit down there and pound it out until I get it done.
Does writer's block just completely vanish once you see some money hit the table? Like, oh, okay, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I have to put something down now.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of one of those things where like I think the problem with writer's block is it's like the act of sitting down to write is what's hard. It's like that procrastination. Once you're actually sitting there and actually writing, it just goes away. So if you just sit down and just start writing something, I find it always comes back. And part of the reason I procrastinate is like I'm always worried that like, what if one of these days I sit down and then I just don't know how to write anymore? Or I just, it just seems like illogical, but I think a lot of people have that. It's like, what if I suck? What if I'm not as good as I think I am? So you always just have that doubt. But once I sit there and just start writing whatever I can, if the scene's hard, I'll skip ahead to like 3 scenes to an easier scene and at least start writing something. And once you start doing that, then it's like, okay, it flows. And then, then the next day I'll be like, oh, hey, I got an idea how I could do that other scene. And, so I think, I don't know if writers have different ways of dealing with it, but like every writer I talk to, like kind of has the same question. So I've come to realize like we all have the same problem. So it's like, well, if we all have it, then it's not unique to you. It's just a problem that exists with this job. So it's like, yeah, just deal with it, do the best you can. And as long as you're somehow getting something done, then you're doing fine.
How do you, because I'm curious, there's a difference between personal projects and their projects that you're hired to do. Or that you're, being asked to do or talked about, just those two different camps. Is your writing process different between one and the other? Because do you find yourself wanting to spend more time on the ones that you have more personal vested interest in?
Yeah, obviously it's funner to do ones for yourself that I know I'm going to do, but you have to be responsible and do the ones that you've been paid to do, which does suck sometimes, right? Because you'd always just write, it's like any job, right? You'd rather just be working on your own stuff. But it's like, even now it's like, man, I want to finish I'm Haunted 5. I want to finish that script. But it's like, man, I got other things I'm supposed to do. So it's like I could do both, but it's like, nah, I should sit down and finish, at least work solidly on the thing I'm supposed to do. Because you do feel better at the end of the day. Because if I'm writing my own stuff, yeah, it's fun. But in the back of my mind, I know that I'm neglecting my work, which
Hmm.
just kind of weighs on me. So it's like I should just do the responsible thing. And so I'm usually pretty good at that. But even scripts that I have no real interest in that I'm doing just for a paycheck, I kind of grow to like them. Like you grow to like the characters, and it kind of becomes like a part of you. It's like raising a kid. Like that's not yours. It's just like you still have some affection for them because like you spend so much time with them. So I just like, there's scripts where I always think back, like, man, that was a great script. And it's like, I don't know whatever happened with that. It never got made. And I never talked to that guy again, but I had fun writing that thing.
Hmm.
But in a perfect world, like especially after we did Hotbox, we did 2 Grotesques, we've done 3 I'm Haunteds. It seems like I've been doing more and more of my own stuff, and it's been taking up more and more of my time, which kind of sucks because it means I'm making less money
Right.
and spending money. But if I could figure out a way to have those be way more profitable, that it's like I don't need to take the writing gigs unless I absolutely want to, or unless they're like Hollywood level where I could buy a new house kind of thing. But if I never had to take the really small indie ones again, I think that'd be kind of cool. I could just write whatever the hell I want.
How do you go about distributing the films that you've done? Because you've done 2 Grotesques, you've done if I recall correctly 3 Haunteds, and then
Yeah.
you've producing in terms of producing your own work. One of the greatest mysteries for people that haven't experienced it yet is, sure, they can be creative. They can write a great story. They can make it. They can even maybe even do it on a higher budget than what they thought they would. But if they're having to if they're the ones that actually have to make the money and there's no middleman, and they're not selling it to a larger company, how do they go about doing that?
I like for streaming, I go through Film Hub. I've had good experience with them. You're not going to make a hell of a lot of money, but and from there, like probably 80% of the money I make comes from Tubi, and then like everything else makes up the other 20%. It might even be 90%. Like Tubi's kind of where you want to be, at least for now. But I mean, you're still making like pennies per watch, so like you need to promote the hell out of it and have like thousands and hundreds of people watch it just to make like barely anything. But it is money coming in, and I'm still making money on older films, like on a or weekly, monthly basis.
Hmm.
So I do that. I sell DVDs that I make and sell myself. I make them for about $10, sell them for $20, and I don't sell a huge amount of them, but like selling one DVD, that's like 1,000 or 10,000 streaming views. So it's like real cash. We also, for the bigger movies, we do like screenings here in Edmonton. Like we do like one premiere for kind of everyone, but we usually do 2, like spread out by a week or whatever. But we rent a movie theater, and then like a big movie theater, and then sell tickets to that, which we make a profit off of, and then we sell merchandise at the show, and those actually make pretty decent money. I would love to do like 100 of those, but that's just kind of too hard. So we do that. I put them on my YouTube channel, so I get a bit of ad revenue from there, but also just it's not only the ad revenue, but just the eyeballs on it. Like we get people watching it, and then they end up watching all my other stuff, and they buy a DVD, and they buy one of my books. Some of them watch it, and then we start talking, and then they hire me to write a movie for them. So it's like it leads to like a job. So it's not just like a 1-for-1 correlation where you make a movie and you make a profit. It's like you have to figure out like 20 different income streams for how to use this movie. And I did a movie called it's called the Ezra and Gore Girl Horror Anthology, because I had all these short
That's a
horror
mouthful.
films. It is. But I had all these. I had like I'm in Love with a Dead Girl. I had all these short horror films we made. They were all kind of like 2 to 10 minutes. But I was like, hey, if you put them all together, it's like an hour long. That's almost a full movie. So I was like, what if we put them together and then we shot like a 20-minute, half-hour wraparound story, and then put them together, and then we only had to shoot for 2 days because like an hour of the movie was already done. It's like existing movies. And so we shot for 2 days for the wraparound story. I released that as a feature-length movie, and I got a whole bunch of new eyeballs on my short films. And now it's making money through Film Hub as well.
What's the most rewarding process about creativity for you?
It's hard to say. Part of it is like personally, it's like anytime you get something done. Like even now, like I've written like 100 scripts probably, and maybe more. But anytime you finish it, 'cause I still have ones that aren't finished. Anytime you finish one, it's like, okay, I did it. Like I followed through on something that's hard and finished it. That's always nice. But as far as like validation, it's always nice when like it's like we put insane amount of work into this project, and all of a sudden it's in the theater, and all of a sudden it's like everyone's there, and there's just like hundreds of people here, and they're just like laughing their asses off, like in a good way, and just like enjoying it. It's like, yes, it worked. Like I had people that are willing to pay to watch this, and they're liking watching it, and they're laughing at the jokes where they're supposed to be laughing. It's kind of like, okay, I did a good job at what I was supposed to do. So it always just like feels great.
Well, Brandon, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It was great to get to. You're the first Canadian actually I've talked to, so it's hey, sorry, that's the American thing I have to do is to say a. I know it's awful for you guys to hear, but I felt obligated to do it on behalf of all my brothers.
That's all right. The first time I heard it.
Any final thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
No, yeah, if you want to check me out, my company's called Higher Universe. So if you go to YouTube and just look up Higher Universe, you'll see the yellow HU. That's my channel where you'll be able to find, I think pretty much all my movies are on there. Grotesque 2 isn't yet, but short films. I do, I have a podcast I do too with another Edmonton filmmaker where we talk to people in the industry. And so I have all sorts of stuff on there. But yeah, go check me out. And then, if you go to Tubi, you can find my movies on there if you prefer to watch them on there with ads.
Well, Brandon, it's been great. Thanks.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on.